Okay, hello. Welcome to the thing where we talk about the stuff. I'm MZ, and there's also a Jad.
What's up, Bruce?
Yeah, that's pretty much what we do. There's been a lot of PU stuff happening. Um, a lot of small things I don't want to spend too much time on, but kickoff is done. GGOPW won that. It was whatever. Not super worth the watch. He's just been kind of lucky. Not terrible, but like kind of lucky. So or and then there's some matchup stuff. Not like the most fun. This PU Open keeps happening. I would love people to keep following that. There's been some cool highlight matches. Last week we had like Fellerburn versus Adam, Katut versus Metal Gross, Gary Oak versus Esterosa, and then this week there's like I'm playing Ziri. There's False versus Fellerburn. There's Ajna versus Hajat. We both got like really hard comparative matchups. You got Ajna and I got Ziri, but like there's no mandatory replays and people aren't posting a lot, so I get why Open's kind of not being paid attention to. I'll definitely share replays of me versus Yuri because there's gonna be a tier shift this Saturday. There's no point in keeping it secret really. But yeah, small things to
Yeah.
what's not a small thing is that we did a whole council vote, but then we banned nothing. Maybe that is a small thing. Does that still count as a small thing? Like we had a vote. That's not nothing, but
Yeah, I think the significant thing comes from that we didn't ban anything.
yeah.
That's the more people will be interested in that, I think.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we voted on Galarian, Rapidash, Thievul, Drifblim, and Appleton. Appleton we can kind of forget about. No one wanted to ban it. It was definitely something we should keep an eye on, in my opinion. Like high threat level, pretty borderline in like the earlier meta, but it's pretty clear it's been fine. Drifblim, you were the only one who voted to ban it. Actually, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
What was
I
that?
just think, yeah, I just think with Drifblim, it's just such a different Pokemon in comparison to the rest of its equivalent types of things. Like if you look at all the flying types and all the ghost types, Drifblim is so much different in comparison to them. So it manipulates you in the team builder there. But where it got me is like the whole like calm mind strength sapping shenanigans. So if you didn't have something that could immediately toxic or immediately pressure it, it became a quick problem really quickly. And yeah, I think that probably maybe voting ban was a bit too hasty. But I didn't want to wait on somebody getting absolutely murked badly for us to say, okay, no, we should ban this now.
Yeah, and I think that actually really describes the different reactions towards Galarian and Rapidash because it's a mon that really did not. It showed up a lot in PPL, but it didn't be. It wasn't being broken. It was just around a lot, being very strong, but it wasn't really sweeping and cleaning everyone. Uh, and that like it got only 2 ban votes from you and Termy, and everyone else was no ban. Pretty much just because like we're kind of willing to wait until it's actually in practice doing the things that we know that it's kind of capable of. Whereas you guys are, no, this is annoying now. I just don't want to deal with it because it's going to start doing that. I think that pretty much is the entire difference, really.
Yeah, I think in tiering in general, you have two trains of thought. Like one, which is like I need to see this do things in practice for me to be like, okay, I want to ban it, and the other is like, okay, in theory, this manipulates the builder and it's quite broken, so we should probably ban it before anybody does get completely annihilated first. You know what I mean? So yeah, me and Tammy were both varying degrees on that side, and the rest of the council seems to be on the other side
Mhm.
with respect to Rapidash as it in its current form.
Yeah.
I think it suffers a lot from just being generally weak before it sets up. I've mentioned this a couple of times when people have spoken to me about it, which it kind of reminds me of Houndoom from previous generations in that aspect. But yeah, I think that it is still broken despite those problems.
Mm-hmm. I think we get a bit of a different split on Thievul being the last Pokemon because that actually got 4 out of 7 ban votes, which is a majority, but not enough to remove. Because then Sam I Am and I both joined in on banning Thievul, and this is a very different Pokemon because I actually think it already has been like demonstrably a problem. It wasn't in PUPL. It actually, like, PUPL usage stats are fascinating. I will talk about them at some point. But I think it's been very easy to see Thievel in practice just be incredibly stupid. The risk reward is just insane um, because of the way it guarantees kills. I even dropped a replay in my reasoning, like, here's just one game where I think Thievel's just really dumb because it's just very easy for me to, oh yeah, this is a good game that showed off Thievel. Um, but on the other hand, you had three, like, Akira 2 times the tap and Slanet, all voted do not ban on everything. Because they're like, we just do not feel the need to mess with the meta right now. It's mostly playable and fine, and we've got a tier shift in less than a week. Let's not fuck things up. And, like, I kind of get it. I think Thievel's broken. I think it unfairly rewards people way too much. It is at least a mon that requires you to be good to use it more. It's not like a broken mon where anyone can just roll up and completely fuck you up. Like Trick Room, Alolan Executor took no skill, really. You just Trick Room and then you hit buttons. This is still something that you need to, like, get this frail fox in to actually start getting kills and stuff. So that's definitely a plus to it. And we've had, like, a more fun and enjoyable meta. So I get that feeling. We just fall down on the side of, like, this is too far where it's clearly a problem. And also, in what way could tier shifts possibly balance it? It's not like we're getting Thievel switch-ins. There aren't really Thievel... Like, we have the few niche Thievel switch-ins already. That's not going to change.
Yeah, that's the kicker for me. It's that you cannot switch into Thievel ever unless you have a scraggy Zweilous or Volibly or whatever crazy LC Dark type you want to try. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like, okay, if you want to run a Tanja, you have to think about using one of those LC type Pokemon, or if you're on a Stunfisk, you might also want to consider using that, because otherwise, people's going to come in and really abuse that stakeout, and especially on stuff that really can't afford to take damage, it becomes, doubly as good.
Yeah, it guarantees a kill. I can use Thievel to basically, like, trade it for Stunfisk, and that was all the breaking it did. But Stunfisk is a really critical defensive Pokemon. Like, you didn't really have an option. You couldn't switch out to anything. Something was going to die. Yeah, I just think the risk-reward on Thievel is just so crazy. And obviously there's a few other things. Yes. Licky and Type Null help. But even then, they're, like, abusable in very specific and predictable ways. Knockoff helps a lot. Hazards help a lot. All of that. That, like... Yeah, I think there's just way too much in Thievel's favor, and it's just not a Pokemon we can have. And I really don't have a problem with, like, freeing it, waiting, going, oh, this is a problem, and banning it again. Like, just today, UU unbanned Venusaur and Diggersby, and they're going to hold a vote later in the week on whether they should reban it. I really don't have a problem trying it out. I was very happy to try Thievel out. In past metas, like Ninjask Berserker meta, everything was offensive enough where I felt it was actually pretty reasonable that Thievel wasn't, like, always stealing kills in a really dumb way. Now, teams, like, kind of need to regress to a bit of a fatter place where Thievel it's just dumb. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not happy that it's still in the meta. It's not the worst. It's certainly not running PUPL. We can get to those usage stats. But I really do think it's, like, very solidly just not good for the meta. Adds nothing and takes away so much.
Yeah, I think that's the main problem for me as well. It's like the benefit of keeping Thievel is, like, I guess, balancing stuff in the tier of the speed tier below it. So it'd be like Drifblim, that type of stuff.
Yeah, Drifblim and Nisharna are, like, nothing to keep in check.
Yeah, that's, like, an argument for keeping Thievel, but honestly, that to me falls flat when, with Thievel, you're either getting multiple kills really easily, or you're taking a really important Pokemon down, just one, and that to me is just like, especially when you factor in, like, flinch chances and stuff. I'm sure there have been too many people that have been flinched by Dark Pulse before it's got the stakeout boost or anything. It's been like, oh man, but yeah, I think people, it's just, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, so that's our anti-Thievel screed. I will say, I keep referencing usage stats because I really found SS usage stats fascinating for this week. Other tiers, I'm sure you can take stuff out of that. I don't want to go on too long. We saw Gourgeist forms between them get 11 usage as like this mon that's incredibly strong, and we're not voting on it yet. But man, Gorgeist is crazy and should. It's very funny that it keeps being balanced by just itemless stuff. We'll see that a lot
Yeah.
in games, but yeah. Kling Clang got the most. You got the same amount of uses as Gorgeist regular though, and Sandslash, and that's fascinating. Sandslash I get. Kling Clang is not a mon I really felt obligated to use really, but it saw like so much defensive usage. Uh, that yeah, it really took off in that regard much more than Shift Gear. I thought that was fascinating. Um, More interesting things. Right after that, you have Unpheasant, Galarian Rapidash, and Thievul, all with 7 uses at the next most. Unpheasant, the one that's not broken, had an 85% win rate. Galarian Rapidash, a 42% win rate, and Thievul, a 28% win rate. That's just 2 wins out of 7 uses. So they did not show up. And that is definitely that's not nothing. Like PUPL looks like a pretty fun meta this week. It is a pretty fun meta, in fact. Um, so yeah, that's a bit of a check on their presence, I guess. The only other really funny thing I wanted to say is that Roselia got 5 usage and Marini got 0. And there's no previous meta of PU where Roselia was getting so much more usage than Marini. And it won 80% of its games too, so that was really funny.
Yeah, I love Roselia in this method. Just generally, the fast sleep powder is so good.
Yeah, Rose is awesome. I like a bunch of different sets. It's fun. I think that brings us to PUPL.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. There's no replays thread, so bear with us as we scroll through. First, oh boy, is the Meowsticks versus the Clangs. This is my team, and I regret to inform you. Yeah, we're still pretty annoyed that the Meowsticks are just a really unlucky team and keep losing games that just they shouldn't have been lost, and that's kind of how it be. This one was a little better because I didn't really think we got outright complete robbed on anything, as much as just we had several games that like, oh, it could have gone either way, and then bullshit happens, and then we have no chance. That's yeah, that was just kind of this series. It was very frustrating, especially since the Clangs are like almost certainly out, and having this win, we tied, and winning the week instead would put us almost certainly in playoffs already. And instead that just did not happen. It was very annoying.
Yeah,
That's just my whining out of the way.
Yeah, I think generally the Clangs, man for man, they're one of the best rosters in PUPL, but for whatever reason they couldn't get the teams together, or there might have been a synergy issue or whatever. But they haven't performed to the level we know that the players that they have are capable of.
Yeah, they have some really strong starters. Like Lax and Piff and Ajna and Keo and Pablo are all very strong. And then after that, the other names aren't like that bad or anything. Those are just some solid names. I don't think they'd pulled it together that much. They do still have playoff chances. We'll get to that at the end. But yeah, I guess starting with SS, I was the first SS game to play versus Sergio. Sergio brought an Avarice team who's apparently helping them. Avarice is on the Octilleries who are already out, so I get it. I think it was pretty bad. It lost kind of hard to Thievul, and it also kind of sucked versus Stunfisk, and I had both of those. And I basically just hit buttons and won. There was nothing interesting about this game, really. Like I just kind of messed them up because the team I just didn't really work.
Yeah, I don't really know about just generally building in this meta. It feels like it's oftentimes like a coin flip. Like sometimes you get a matchup where your team will work perfectly, and other times you just get the opposite of that. But
I agree.
Team,
there are matchups where it could work. And certainly matchup is something to do. But I also think in general this team was just very weirdly flawed. Like it didn't switch into anything, but it wasn't that scary as an offensive team, I guess, is the way I would put it.
Yeah, it's a very messy offense. It feels kind of like the Somalia team You remember the similarity with the Crustle and the Pikachu from a
Yeah,
while
it
back?
also felt like Galbia spikes, the sample from Oras. I mentioned that
Yeah,
it's very
yeah.
similar.
That seems old.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too long on this because my goal is to stop spending way too long in the first few series and then like skipping through the other ones like really fast.
Yeah, fair enough.
But
I mean, yeah, there's not really much to talk about in this
yeah,
game.
there wasn't much. There was Bugsnator versus Piff. Um, Piff stalled kind of. This one was actually like a bit more towards a balance from him. And Bugsnator brought a team that turns out Katut, who played earlier in the week, brought 5 out of 6 of the same Mons. We didn't know that at the time. I hadn't even seen
Mm.
Bugsy's team when he played. It's built around a very different style. Like they're very different teams. Um, Bugsy outplayed Piff pretty hard, I think, and had a decent like spikes matchup versus Piff's. Like it's a Piff team. It's more balanced. It's still very fat. It's got a licky licky and a fat cling clang and a throw and a sand. Like his whole team is vulnerable to spikes, and his removal is sand slash, which is just not great at getting around spin blockers. I think sand slash can be your only removal, but on a team like this that's just so spikes vulnerable, it was a real problem.
Yeah,
And Piff had some cool
yeah,
stuff, the sub SD licky licky, but it was not enough.
yeah. I think it just generally it looks like one of those semi-stall teams. I remember like people like you remember Tumu from like ages ago.
Yeah.
Used to be a user a long, long time ago. He used to love teams with like a Spadef's SD mon, and
Mm-hmm.
this kind of feels like it has that same vibe with the Mickey Licky there. But yeah, the key flaw obviously is the lack of hazards control. And when you have a team like that and you can't get hazards off, it's curtains, man. It really sucks.
Yeah, I mean, we only set rocks and one spike, but like it was a lot for chipping licky licky. He had a life orb rapidash that hit one move. It's like, well, I can't really switch out. It's kind of worthless now. Um, yeah, that was pretty much the game, and I think Bugsy also just like played it pretty well, kept around it. Had an itemless Driftblim that also really helped with the Gorgeists. I rate itemless Driftblim. Actually, I've been using that too. I didn't. I hadn't seen Bugsy's team beforehand, but I was like, oh hey, itemless Driftblim, that's cool. So yeah, that was cool. On the flip side was Lax versus Termi. Termi, like you, like I like this meta a lot. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm like, heck yeah, PU's cool. Termi is much more like you. It's like she's like it's matchup based and annoying, and I don't like these dumb mons. I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna bring full stall, no rocks, just fucking yeah. So we tried to full stall Lax. It didn't work out. And this game really blurs the lines between like half getting pretty fucking unlucky and half that stall. You're taking so many attacks, it's just gonna happen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like so many things kept like setting Termi back, and then Termi would get hazards off and recover with everything, get into a good position, only get like crit or full parrot again, and that was like the whole game for like 200 turns until Lax just kind of won. Golduck Hydro Pump critting its way through Licky Licky at the end. Um, yeah, that was basically how the game went. I can't just say it was like getting hacks because obviously it's stall. You kind of expect that stuff to happen when you're just trying to weather all these attacks. Um, like I wouldn't say Termi was hacked, but it definitely has that feel of like that's basically how Lax broke stall. You hit so many buttons, eventually something's just gonna mess the other person up. Really.
Yeah, yeah, that's a fair point. I think I the where I got introduced to this sort of idea of just breaking stall down by constantly attacking and then eventually critting was like I saw Teddy play an OU game once, and he manipulated the game in such a way where he was constantly asking the question of, okay, you're going to take 40% from well, you in theory you will, like, let's say Licky Licky takes 40% from Rapidash. It's going to have to keep taking that 40% on every switch in. So if you can manipulate a game so that Licky Licky is always coming in, the crit's going to happen eventually. And I think Lax did that quite well over the course of,
Yeah,
I don't know, long game.
that's also big for Thievel because Thievel, like Licky Licky wants to switch in, it'll take 60. One flinch is all it takes, and they always have to wish. So you can just Dark Pulse and then switch out,
Bait
and
the, yeah,
eventually you're gonna
bait the
flinch.
thing.
It's that kind of thing. So yeah, that was the
Yeah,
game.
exactly.
So Termi took the loss to Lax. Lax's team was funny. It was a Gum team, and this was the one with the safety goggles on Pheasant because Gum was very afraid of Lilligant. So that was I don't know, a notable gimmick, I guess.
I don't know
Um,
if you can call it notable, but yeah, sure.
it was a thing that happened. I just realized I forgot to pull up the DPP game. That's fine. Um, SM, we had Esterasa versus Rob Jr. This was fun. You want to talk about this one? I'm gonna find the DPP game.
Uh, I actually really like Rob Jr.'s team, to be honest, and
Thank
Esterosa's
you.
team
I
kind
made
of
it.
looks like standard.
We
Huh?
didn't plan.
What?
I made Rob Jr.'s team. I was so happy because I I really do not like building SM. I think SM is a much better meta than it is to build. Like the meta itself is not terrible. Building, I fucking hate it. It's there's too much annoying. Like working out switches to Drampa and Simisear and beating Jellicent and all that stuff. I think building SM is just so fucking ah. And I built both teams this week. I wanted to shoot myself, and you complimenting that there actually really did feel good. I'm
I mean,
so
fair enough,
broken.
but
I'm so broken, dude.
I just generally love the idea of having like Aggron and Dramp on the same team because they complement each other so well as breakers. Especially if I'm guessing it's Rox Aggron. It has to be Rox Aggron.
It's Rox
Um,
Aggron, it's AV Drampa, and then it's Nasty Plot,
Perfect.
Fairy, and Mime as a breaker, which I actually think is very cool. Mime does a lot of very cool shit. And
Yeah,
Esterosa, like
yeah,
you said, brought very standard. I looked at Esterosa's teams, I went, they've been bringing very standard stuff. In general, I think Rob Jr. is like a better player, just, more experienced, more Torwins, that kind of stuff. But I think what a cool edge would be to bring something non-standard that tends to fuck with like the very basic stuff Esterosa uses. And I settled on Nasty Plot Z Mime, which has a good mix, I think, of strong setup power to just blow through something like Jellicent with Psyshock, but also good immediate power because that Fairy Z nuke not much resists Fairy. And I also went with Technician HP Fire as just like immediate strong fire move as well. Really cool mon. I think people should mess with it. I had a lot of fun using Mime. Building, not so much. Using, yeah.
yeah. To be honest, with this team, there's a lot of pressure on Mime to be that immediate breaking power. Although there would usually be a lot of pressure on it, but you have Drampa and you have the Aggron to just like really put power on things, and yeah, I really like that part of it. Tangela also is just generally unkillable, so yeah, I like the look of it. And to be honest, in the game, it kind of felt in that way where you just sort of had you didn't have like a generally stronger team, like defensively speaking, but you had the pressure to put on Esterosa to like make him think, oh, I have to be scared of this thing. Like, what does
Mm-hmm.
this thing do? Is this a particular set? And yeah, Drampa did a lot of work as well. I'm quite happy that AV Drampa did so much work.
Yeah, I will say Esteros also had some cool stuff. We could have been very weak to an HP fighting Pom Pom. Fortunately, it was actually U-turn, but that was still big. The team's flying resist is definitely the big weakness. Esterosa also had a Life Orb mixed specially biased Torterra with Leaf Storm. That was cool, and it could have done so much more work if Rob Jr. didn't stay in on it turn one with Jellicent, predicting Torterra to not just Leaf Storm when we have Tangela, or like not just to go for Woodhammer when we have Tangela and Skuntank and Drampa and all that could come in. Just stayed in and wisped the Torterra, or maybe he was expecting Fat Rocks and Scarf Sandslash. Actually, that was probably it. Point is, like that was really big because that Torterra could have been very, very scary. But yeah, overall, I think this was a really fun back and forth game. The big scary was when Esterosa also had a Waterium Water Spout Jellicent, and Rob Jr. switched in Skuntank to Jellicent very early. Jellicent Hydro Vortex is Tangela. It's going to kill next turn. Rob Jr. switches in Skuntank, thinking A, Shadow Ball, B, its Z move, probably not also Water Spout. Got blown back by that, just not expecting that at all. Which was like a big problem at that point. But then proceeded to play really well, I think. Had some good predictions. Esterosa also completely threw away their Simisear, switching it into Drampa and Grass Knotting and just dying. Um, but yeah, overall, I think we spent more time on this because it was actually just a pretty fun game worth checking out. Like cool plays, cool teams. I liked this one. It was definitely a highlight for me. Hajad's asleep, I guess. I don't know. He muted himself. I have no idea why. I assume it was just like a brief whatever. But we don't stop or edit on this podcast. We're going to keep going. Besides this, Ajna versus Raichi, that was the other SM game. I also built Raichi's team. People were like, where's your hazard control? Very intentionally did not have hazard control, and I actually kind of stand by this. I don't think this team needs hazard control. Um, Pharisee does not spike on it. Quillfish should barely spike on it, really. And mostly you get to trade hazards with the opposing team. What kind of sucks to face is when they have their own spikes Quillfish and a metronome cryogonal, the only spinner that can't be pressured by our spikes and stuff, that will also eventually break Jellicent if it doesn't get curse bodied. All that together could have been very hard. Also, in hindsight, we should have been Pursuit Primate to pressure that more. But yeah, this was basically just we both had these hazard offenses. Both set up a ton of hazards extremely early. Like all these spikes and rocks went up. But immediately after, Raichi let his Electros get 1v1'd by Ajna's Quillfish, just on predictions, like is Quillfish going to go hard out to Torterra, whatever. And B, Ajna got the Cryogonal in on the Jellicent, and after it was parting shotted, and immediately just crit freeze dries right through it. There's no chance to spin block. There's no chance to curse body. There's no chance to whatever. And that pretty much immediately killed the game. This is one of those games where, like, there's literally nothing you could do about that. Sometimes you're just going to get crit in a bad spot, and that's the game. It would have been hard to beat Spiritomb and the Ape and stuff, but I really don't think it was impossible. I like the chances with just how good Jellicent, Victory Bell, Scarf Ape could have been here together, and we'll never know. They also said it was a special Spiritomb that might have just won. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But that game was really frustrating because this was also the final game of the week, where if Raichi won, we won the week, and we're almost guaranteed playoffs. And that crit was like, well, we don't get automatic playoffs now. Big whoop. Hey, Jad, you back?
Yeah, I am. And just a brief aside, I don't think generally it's that, I guess. You mentioned quickly about the hazards and stuff. Yeah, I think personally with Pharisee as your hazard setter, you're kind of just inviting hazards on, given how passive it is. And a lot of it is going to be like leech seeding, gyro balling, and then setting up your double hazards. So I don't know, I don't particularly like that Pharisee is the hazard setter here. I think it'd probably be better off with like an Agron and just really riding on that offensive pressure.
Yeah, I was fine with getting to Hazard Wars. That was the thing. Like when we got into a Hazard War, this team actually was doing pretty well with that. Like the offensive eel set, the Jellicent. I actually think it kind of works well in that scenario. But I can definitely get where people were like, why would you even try to go for that? Going to Hazard Wars like that with no remover is pretty dangerous and dumb. And it definitely didn't work out there. So
yeah, I think the team wasn't ideal, but I still think the matchup was playable. Like Raichi had a shot, which is you can the key thing when you make a team is just to make sure that your guy has a shot in most scenarios, and I think Raichi did have a shot in most scenarios. It just didn't come off, unfortunately. This time they had a really nice matchup with the Cryo, as previously mentioned, and also the Quillfish.
But that's nothing compared to the next game, because oh boy, TSR played Oras again. TSR is such a good sport, dude. He's a really good player. He's been doing good prep, and he's 1-5. And we're not subbing him out because it's through absolutely no fault of his own. Keo brings a super Keo team. It's webs. It's got another electrode. We're completely prepared for this. It's not a problem. And then Ponder proceeds to just flinch, crit, and kill our Volabai. And that just fucking, that was just so dumb that there was nothing to be done. We lose our extremely valuable Volabai very early on. He then gets 2 extremely high rolls to 2 KO our Semi-Sage with his Life Orb Shadow Sneak Gorgeist. When we could have really used still having that Semi-Sage. That together like completely fucked TSR up so bad, and there was nothing to be done. Yep, that's it. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think the it was just unfortunate. Like, I think the Poignard stuff sealed it in terms of, like, there was pretty little shot after that. It was just like a question of Kyo digging the grave after that. And to be honest, I think TSR played it fine. Like, I don't see any like reason why he played it badly. In fact, I think he played it quite well, given the the crap that Kyo threw at him. So yeah, I don't know. It's just unlucky, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah.
Serial unlucky.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we are 1-6 in ORAS overall, and I swear to God, like we're not even worried about our ORAS. We think our like, I'm more worried about like our SM or whatever because we can't do anything about games like these. So oh well. On the flip side, we have Lilbert versus Pablo in black white. Pablo being like the black white goat, bringing a really different and interesting team with a Whirlipede and a Slacking. And we reused almost the same thing from last week, but with a different Scarfer because Scarfer Nelix is kind of silly. And yeah, more Scraggy Tentacool. And I actually really liked this matchup. And Tentacool was pretty cool to have in the one case as a Whirlipede. And I think most of this came down to like Lilbert played really well around the Slacking, and Pablo also kind of fucked up with it and sacked it later. But yeah, I think this just mostly went extremely well for us. Like pretty much everything went how we wanted it to. He made a good like good goth plays, good anti-slacking plays, and that was really all it took to kind of just clean this game up. Scraggy didn't even do anything. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just a cool game, I suppose. Black-white game.
Yeah, cool black-white games.
It's actually quite different. Yeah, black-white action.
Yeah, I'll stop like being the one to just summarize everything when it's not my team, but I know these games pretty well. The last one was Brufasa versus Spatial Rendezvous. This was just another one of those games where we get a little bit unlucky and like either player could have won, but after that, like no, we just don't really have a shot.
Yeah, I had no idea what was going on, to be honest. This is DPP out of my comfort zone, so I have no idea.
Yeah, like we dodge one sleep powder while we're out playing and predicting him to sleep powder, but then we also like miss a vastly more important sleep powder on Spatial's Muck, which let the Muck rest. And after the Muck rests, we can't really kill it. Like we chipped the Muck, we got it down. We just need to stop it from resting. Oh, we missed, and yeah, that made things very very hard. Then we got frozen, and after that point, it was pretty much impossible. You know, it do be like that sometimes.
It really did.
Yeah. Yeah, our DPP is like 3-3. It's been doing fine, but it's been a little bit of a struggle. We're working on it. Games like that don't help, but you know, Spatial had some cool stuff from what we saw. I don't think we had a guaranteed win by any means. It was just. Fortunately for us, in the next series, the Drakloaks only tied the Clay Dolls, which is what we kind of needed to stay ahead of them in terms of standings. So. This was definitely a series I was looking forward to. The Drakloaks being like a team we ranked pretty highly, that had started out pretty poorly, and the Clay Dolls being a team that like just grabbed so much momentum and went really far, really fast. But now that the Drakloaks had kind of been turning things around, I wanted to see how they'd fare versus the Clay Dolls, and it ended up being a kind of interesting series with a couple of just absolutely throwaway games. Like I don't know how you feel about this one, but like they started out with where is it? Katut versus Confide. Yeah, Katut versus Confide, where Confide brought a very silly team that I do not rate in any way, shape, or form.
Bug spam? Is it bug spam?
No, Vespiquen's just defensive.
Damn, bro. I really didn't like this team. I just think the Clay Dolls are a bit ahead of everybody in terms of the SS because the meta is just so messy at the moment. In my opinion, it's so messy, and when you have a team that's like constantly experimenting, constantly playing the game, they're going to be ahead of other teams that aren't doing that. So, you know, they can make up for the playing deficit that they drafted for with just pure like preparation. And I feel like they're preparing really well at the moment and preparing enough to be like one of the front runners in the PPL. So yeah, they're doing really well.
Yeah, yeah. And for his part, Confide managed to bring a team that was just, I don't know. My biggest concern was that you've got a Vespiquen, but if you're using this like fat, funky defogger, make it one that actually gives you a Thievel switch in, because my god, uh, Thievel would have been just a nightmare. And so it was
Yeah,
like everything,
absolutely.
everything Katut had. Vespiquen's super easy to pressure. Katut ended up having a sub bulk up throw, which was a pretty incredible matchup. But like, I wouldn't even call it matchup. I'd call it that team was a bit yikes. Um,
Yeah, I mean you're asking for it when your fighting switching is Scarf
mhm.
Gorgeist.
Yeah, yeah. The Claydoll's 3-0'd SS, and they like Dracloak's only tied by dint of their old gens. Um, TJ beat Lopunny Kicks. I don't know. This was a kind like teams were kind of interesting, and also this was just a little bit forgettable of a game, to be honest. Most interesting
Yeah,
thing
honestly, I have no idea. Yeah,
was
I just completely
TJ
forgot what
had
happened in
a
this game.
TJ had a subtoxic Gorgeist, which was like pretty cool and pretty annoying for Kicks to deal with. And Kicks made a lot of plays and like tried to make things work, but overall it was just kind of hard for him. Um, the Gorgeist didn't like it went out pretty early, but at that point TJ just kind of had a pretty good position and played this like pretty solid. Scarfun
Yeah,
Pheasant.
I think.
Scarfun Pheasant is also rarely a mon with that great of a matchup, but it had a very good matchup here. Um, like no real flying resist from Kicks. It was bolt on and like citrus sandslash.
Yeah, I think Kings could have done a lot without the Hatcham there. I think this is a matchup where Hatcham does really well, where it's just sort of like trying to fend off the Sandslash until it gets weakened. And because Sandslash is such a crucial mon in the defensive core for Kicks, it's just sort of like, okay, when Sandslash is gone, that gives license to Pinsir, it gives license to Unpheasant, does loads of stuff in this
Yeah,
matchup.
I just
So
don't
yeah,
think like you
I think
shouldn't be that reliant on rocks. Because what if they're just boots? Like if you're that reliant on rocks, I do think that's an inherent problem. Whether or not Hatcham is being
yeah,
silly.
but the thing is with boots that stops you from running stuff like choice band or choice specs,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
which threatens balance cores. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it there's a I guess there's a fundamental trade off if you're using boots, just by virtue of what item you're using. So it's like you can have a dependence on rocks, but in this case, if you have dependence on rocks and the Hatcham shows up, it's just sort of like you need to have a rocker that can rock on Hatcham
Yeah,
reliably, and
I
I
don't
don't
know.
think Sandslash was the call.
I still like. I still just don't rate the dependence. Extra shoutouts to TJ also, for after Kicks has said GG and left the game, dropping a calc of a crit that happened like 2 turns earlier. That no one was like, well, that crit sucked because everyone knew he was already gonna win, and the crit was also with a super luckmon. I just noticed that at the end of the game chat. Why? Who does that? Okay. The last game was Tlenet versus PTF. In general, I rate Tlenet higher, but he brought an experimental little grassy terrain team with manual setting Cottony supporting Swoobat and Thievel, um, which could have been very interesting, but the team was still like a really weird offense overall, and
Yeah,
it definitely did not really work out um, in
100%. I
an,
agree with
in any way.
basically this team just offensed itself, and by that I mean like it just sort of it didn't it just fell over to what PTF brought, which was kind of unfortunate because it's cool. It's very Telenet in the way it's so weird.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I don't know.
If I had to rate one
It's
thing,
so
I think it really need to be sub Salic Swoobat to be like this is the one that actually outspeeds things, and then Thievel with the Unburden, but also like Thievel is just a better check to priority, um, because like the Swoobat being too slow and getting toxic and everything that just kind of hurt it. Um,
mhm,
but I don't know that has other problems. The team itself is still very weird.
yeah,
Um,
it's just a cool thing.
yeah, the big takeaway for Dracloaks though was They lost all three SS, ouch, but they took both SM games versus the Clay Dolls, like extremely powerful SM core. Like after the Clay Dolls got 2-0'd in SM this week, their overall SM record is still 7-5, um, tied for second best, with the Drakloaks and the Karkles, and obviously behind the Dedens. Beating both Skipcan and Yandod, who have been doing pretty gosh darn well. So that's cool for them. You had Ziri beating Skipcan in I don't know. This one was kind of just a game. I wasn't super impressed or interested with anything here. Ziri didn't outplay Skipcan the whole time. They got some stuff wrong. There was a big Fire Blast miss that definitely hurt Skipcan's chances, but I'm not sure that Skipcan was winning anyway. You know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think with this Ziri game, I don't particularly like Ziri's team, but I just think he just sort of outplayed Skipcan just fundamentally, rather than through any particular play. He just sort of
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that the whole time. Like Ziri got some solid stuff wrong early on, and like was definitely in the hole before the Fire Blast miss. It was certainly possible to bring back. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think with Scarf Simisu, it was just a question of how likely Skipcan could work the game into a Simisu win. But I don't agree with a couple of his switches here, and like Skipcan switching in, you don't switch in your win con into anything. Like, that's something you just don't do, and he did it a couple of times, and I think there is a good advantage.
Mm-hmm. The other one was Luthier beating Yandod, which is pretty interesting because like Yandod started out at 4-0 and is now down at 4-2, only tied for the second best record now. Obviously, Soulgazer are still undefeated, but LST has moved up to tie Yandod now with the last two losses. This one was, I think, more interesting. Yandod had a Life Orb Kangaskhan and just led with it and tried to do as much breaking as possible. And like killed Luthier's Metang, stopped rocks going up, chipped the Rotom. It was a very interesting start, I think. But Luthier played this pretty well. Actually, like got a lot of good plays off on Yandod, and basically was pretty fine versus everything else on Yandod's team. Like the final sweeper was Z-Randan Swanna. Luthier has Scarf Dodrio, which is the worst matchup for Swanna possible. It's worse than Lantern. Lantern you can chip, you can play, like you can predict it, you can do something. Scarf Dodrio is always going to be in the back to stop Swanna. There's nothing you can do. And like nothing else on Yandod's team was just too threatening to really do this.
Yeah, exactly. I think it needs like 5% chip or like 10% chip to put it in OK range for Brave Bird or something stupid. But yeah,
I doubt it needs chip. I don't know.
To work it so that you get 100% health and then also get your Z-Rain dance offers. Yeah, it was just like a combination of really good matchup and then also playing it well.
Yeah, so, Luthier played it well, but I don't know what Yandod really could have played for here. I guess try to do more aggron, but even then it only abuses like maybe one Mon in a slower Jellicent. Yeah, it just would have been a little hard.
Yeah, 100%. I think just generally like aggron is just like such a, it either does really well or it falls flat really quickly, and I feel like this one is where it just falls flat, to be honest.
We've got GGOPW versus Lighthouses in Oras. I actually was more impressed with this game. I thought it was a lot more fun. GGOPW is someone, like, he's got a pretty good record now with 4-2, and he just won kickoff as well. And a lot of that has been due to him just kind of being really lucky. Not a terrible player. It's not like, oh, it was all luck or, like, it means nothing. But, like, luck did a lot to supplement him. So I was, like, relatively more impressed with a game where he just kind of played this pretty well versus Lighthouses, in my opinion. I don't think it was a crazy matchup. I don't think Lighthouses played, like, that bad. I just think GGOPW was pretty on top of things here in a much more impressive showcase than I've seen previously.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. I think Oras in general, it's one of those metas where you either fundamentally get it or you don't. I think it's similar in SM, but to a lesser extent. But yeah, I feel like he played this one quite well.
There was some pretty interesting interactions with like a trick spect, a pro pass that had some specs tricked and some other fun stuff. Yeah, I like this game. Worth checking out, I think. Cool beans. Black White, you had Lambovino versus DNB. DNB, another player with like a good record, 5-1 tied for best record, and has been very obviously, and more so in this case, he's just been very lucky. And unlike GGOPW, he's been like very lucky, but that's just supplementing someone who's been decent. I have not seen like DNB's just kind of been lucky and brought stupid things and gotten rewarded. This one I won't even really fault him for though, because Lambovino brought like Sun, and I think Sun just sucks, and he died because Sun is bad. That's kind of my takeaway.
Yeah, I think it was just a really bad attempt at a fish. Given that this meta is almost entirely Trick Room Behemoth at the moment, it's like, why would you even go down this hole of, does the Behemoth set up and do I lose? Like, just the entire idea is just a bit messed up in my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, DNB actually played this. I actually think DNB played this really well, to be honest. I think he did well with a passive team to just get around all the threats.
Mm-hmm. Now, I will say, even in this game where I'm like, DNB is facing a dumb fish, I don't want Lambovino to win with Sun. Sun is bad. Lambovino still lost on a single Focus Blast miss that decided the game. Like, if he had hit Focus Blast, he would have won the game, and he missed it. So, even there, DNB, like, Lambovino had to hit 2 Focus Blasts to win, which I think is like a 51% chance in his favor. So even then, this game was basically a coin flip. I don't know. I'm being pretty harsh on DNB, but like, he's been lucky. That's what are you gonna do?
There was a sucker crit in there, and yeah, I don't know too much. It shouldn't have come down to 2 Focus Blast miss because of that initial crit, but I mean, yeah, sure,
yeah,
whatever.
Probably. I don't know. I'm gonna be harsh on DNB because that's my honest opinion. The last game was DPP Haseup versus Drud. This, they're both like heavyweight players that I think would have been pretty interesting. But overall, Drud kind of dominated this game.
Yeah, he did really well with the offensive pressure, I felt.
Yeah,
I have no idea why
Magmar went in hard.
Him well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Magmar's cool. I haven't seen that a lot, so I assume that's a gimmick, but it looks
fun. It only just, like, it popped up last week when General Annoyance did a lot of work with it. I think it was him. And then also this week a bit more. And it's been shown off to be, like, pretty powerful and scary.
Cool.
But yeah, this was just, like, a pretty strong win from Drud. Like, very convincing beat down here.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Haseup had like a DD Crawdaunt thing, and that also just like couldn't really do anything versus Drud's Tangela. Like an interesting thing going, I think it was Scarf Relicanth plus DD Crawdaunt trying to pressure Tangela, and that just didn't really go well at all. Yeah. So Drud took a win back for the Clay Dolls, but it still came down to 4-4 because Dracloaks took SMSM or S Black White, even after getting swept in SS. So, pretty interesting series.
Yeah, 100%. This is. I was talking to TJ the other week, and I was like, which were the weeks that Yandor lost in that you've won? And every time Yandor has lost, the Kaleidos have either drawn or lost as well. So, for me, the X factor of that team is, does Yandor win a game? Because
apparently,
I'm confident. I'm confident in the Kaleidos to win a majority of the SS games, either 2-1 or 3-0. It just comes down to how many wins that they can take from the more balanced metas, the less messy ones.
Yeah,
and
pretty
Yandor
much.
has been putting, to be honest, Yandor has been putting that SM on its back, to be honest, carrying it big.
Squash has been pretty good too, though. Took a loss this week. Not as good as Yandod with like the 4-0 start, or 4-0 start, but like Squash has not been bad at all in SM. So I won't say it's entirely Yandod. I'll give him the legit props. The next matchup was Karkles versus Beartix. This was big for Beartix. Their first week without Yogi had to dip his manager. Crazy IRL stuff. I don't really know. First week without him, Beartix had started out very strong. Started out like a top team and slowly kept declining and declining. And this was a week they kind of really needed. And they dropped it 6-2 to the Karkles in like a very solid loss, really. Really just
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, they just got outclassed as a team. To be honest, it's evident that without Yogi, that the preparation isn't where the Beartics would like it to be, especially in SM, but notwithstanding SS. I feel like just generally the team's prep is a bit off because they have the talent. They have easily, I think, the best roster in the entire PPL, but it's just, man, when you don't have decent enough teams to play with, every win becomes a challenge.
Yeah. So Carcoals took a couple SS games 2-1. We had Star versus Tony Flygon. Is he just Tony now? He's still Tony Flygon on forums, whatever. I don't know. This was kind of a stupid game. I thought Star's team was like okay, nothing special. I thought Tony's team was actually pretty interesting. Didn't seem that bad. But Star kind of just hit buttons and won. Like, not much happened here. Tony didn't do a lot of pressure with Thievel, which it definitely could have done more than it did. Started out also by sacking his Sandslash early on, and Tony also missed like every single move that he went for that was less than 90 accuracy.
Yeah, that was funny. It's like, come on, get a hit move, do it.
Yeah, he couldn't hit a move, but I really don't think he was taking this anyway. Star just kind of walked all over him. Kepi also got an SS win for the Carcoals. This is the one game that, yeah, Beartix probably should have won this. Also the one game where Galarian Rapidash probably should have done a lot more because it got set up with the Calm Mind, the Key Berry, the Stored Power, all of that. And then Kepi got a series of full paras and Shadow Ball drops with Kadabra to just beat it straight out. And Kepi was saying they were just chipping it into Explosion Rain from Gorgeist. Probably true. And probably had like some kind of shot to win after that. I still definitely would have favored Sigenider had that been how Kepi had to beat it, by sacking Kadabra and then blowing up with Gorgeist. But we never even got to see because the Rap just like got killed in a really dumb way. And from there, Kepi pretty much couldn't lose.
Yeah, I think I like it when I guess newer players they like Kepi play well and take wins, even if it's a bit lucky. Like I guess luck favors the brave in this case. And
yeah, I'm not going fuck Kepi. They shouldn't win. Like no, cool that you won, but like yeah, this is a bit of a stolen game. It is what it is. It doesn't even really change like either team's chances to make playoffs or whatever. Like the outcome of this series was already decided by the time they played. It was just a stupid game. Yeah.
Yeah.
The one game the Beartix did take was Watashi versus Feliburn. Feliburn brought a Grookey offense team, which cool. Terrain's still just not been doing anything. Watashi just
I feel like
outplayed it just wasn't a problem.
Yeah, I think just generally I like that Terrain now has to basically play 5v6 because in comparison when we had Thwacky at the tier, Thwacky was by no means a 5v6. Thwacky was a useful Pokemon and it could do a lot of things for your team. But with Grookey, that is a genuine 5v6. Like Choice Band is cool and all, but it's still a freaking Grookey, man.
It did it killed a throw at 73 with Grassy Terrain boosted Choice Band Woodhammer. It's not nothing, but yeah, it's not Thwacky. It's frail and it's slow.
It's a 5.1. 5.1 plus 6. We'll give you that.
Yeah. I will say this was also kind of a good showcase of Drifblim like not being that crazy. It got the seed, it got the Calm Mind set up, it got a few Calm Minds. And then Watashi was like, I'm bored of Thunderfanging it as its strength saps. I'll just go hard Sandslash, live a hit, Toxic, and wait for it to die. Like Blimp's not bad. Yeah. It's not that it does nothing, but it's not that kind of consistent Calm Mind kill everything that it would want to be.
It suffers from Rapidash syndrome where it has to set up, and by the time it's set up, it's either been toxic or chipped, and it's like, oh, fuck. But yeah, still, in my opinion, it's still a pretty broken element of the meta.
Drifblim's still crazy good. We're just not really seeing it pull off that much, and I think that was a big factor in Feliburn losing. Like, Drifblim had on paper what should have been a pretty cool matchup here, and it just could not pull it off, really, because Blimp.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would actually straight up won if it was sub, but unfortunately, that's not how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, I wonder if we should just see them not running strength sap. That would probably help. Um,
Maybe not strength set, but maybe just mono stab and just not bother
I
with
don't know
normal
about
types.
Mono Shadow Ball. I really don't. Like, I know there's not a lot of normal types and stuff, but whatever. Carcoals also took both SM games in just like LST versus Tasker was pretty interesting. I think Tasker had a lot of stuff going for him. He had a funny Alolan Golem plus Muck team, like
Oh yeah.
trap the steal and do the damage. Um, there was also the really funny bit where Tasker sets up with Torterra, turn one sets up with Dual Dance Torterra versus LST's Clefairy, and then for whatever reason stopped setting up. I feel like he could have just rock polished and SD'd more and just won.
Uh, the only reason in my head is that he's like would hammer Stone Edge and not double stab. That's the only reason.
Oh, if it just wasn't Earthquake at all. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it
I
is
never
probably
even
that
thought
because
about
of
that.
Golem Alola.
Yeah, that would have made a lot of sense actually. The big thing here was basically like after that scare, um, we had this kind of back and forth game, but Tasker sacked the Alolan Golem, switching it hard into a Jellicent that ended up being that just like hard hydro pumped, predicting Tasker to try to double. Could not trap the Ferroseed after that. Altaria is already dead, so it can't defog Ferroseed spikes. You can't like remove from Ferroseed at all. Oh no, the Torterra was Earthquake. He revealed it later.
It was Earthquake.
I don't know. I feel like Task could maybe he was
Okay,
predicting
that
like
is interesting.
Toxic Clef, but Clef didn't Toxic turn two. I have no idea why. I never asked him.
Yeah,
I thought it at the time. Point was, after that happened, um, LSD was basically able to like spike stall and just kind of beat Tasker. And at the end, Tasker like had the curse muck, but with the Ferroseed, LSD was able to PP stall it, and that was game.
yeah, yeah. I'm quite. I don't want to say happy, but I just want to say like LSD did it really well to outplay in quotation marks the better matchup with Golem Alola because it can be really hard to just not switch in your Pharisee given that it's such a good like blanket thing. Just because Golem Alola exists and he played aggressively enough to like catch on a switch. So yeah, well played.
Yeah, LSD's finally like putting up that record that we always knew he could, but he just like never really had, um, which is pretty cool. There's also Bag of Tricks versus Gefahrliche Random, which I will say not in German, just slightly nasally. Uh, this wasn't super interesting. Tricks kind of just won the game. It was a bit of a weird game too. Tricks had what looked like Scarf Torterra, but without synthesis, which I really think you should have. It was probably like Toxic or something. And a lot of the game was Gefahrlicher trying to pressure with his Rocks Calm Mind Clef. Um, but wasn't able to do that enough.
Yeah, I think Gefahrlicher Random's team. It's kind of similar to the AV Dramper Ferroclef team that I have, but he has AV Eel over the Dramper, and I feel like his team suffers for that reason. Like he doesn't have the immediate pressure to just say, okay, I'm bringing in Dramper and I'm clicking Draco Meteor. What are you gonna do about it? Whereas, yeah, cool, you get a pivot in Eel, but what are you gonna pivot into? A freaking Clef? Like, sure, dude. Like, most people will be like, yeah, go ahead. I can bring in whatever on that. So, um, yeah, I think Kefalik Random's team is fine. It's just not great, and Bag of Tricks just sort of abused what he knew, which was like, okay, pressure the things well enough, and eventually things will, my offensive threats will, come good.
Yeah, pretty much. We had Aldo taking the loss to Bobby Dagan in Oras. As good as Carkles have been to be like the top team, their Oras has clearly been the weak point. They're 1-5 there. Aldo is 1-3, and Expulsa was 0-2, and Aldo has just not looked very good in Oras, and this was a bit of a better showing for him, but he was definitely outclassed by Bobby, just like playing this game pretty fucking well.
Yeah, Rodri's so good at Oras, bro. Like,
yeah,
it's a tough ask for anybody to Like you can put the best of the best versus Rodri, and it's no guaranteed win
Yeah,
by any means. So
this wasn't even a
if you're
great matchup
struggling,
for
it must
him.
be hard.
This was not a great matchup for him, but he got multiple kills with banned Golem off the perfect predicts. Golem versus Golem, I'm gonna fire punch on your Bronzor switch. Golem versus Altaria, and I'm locked into Earthquake. I'm calling out your double and just Earthquaking again, and that was just so huge with that just offensive Golem play right there. It also didn't help that he had an HP Ice Ninetales versus all those Altaria, but he would have won anyway at that point. Like, yeah, Rodri's pretty fucking good. Anti versus Evagero on Black White. I guess they're just throwing an Anti because Beartix are having a bit of a time right now. Who was playing Black White for them before? From the Beartix, Chill Shadow, who's 1-4 and just fed up with getting unlucky. Okay, that's fair enough. Andy tried. He had a pretty interesting team too, but Ibigero was good at Black White and kind of just ended up outplaying Anti in like some pretty significant interactions.
Yeah, Evie is pretty much the Black White Queen at the moment. So I think that's the benchmark for any aspiring Black White players to see if you can beat Evie, you're pretty set.
Tied for best record with DNB, who like very clearly would not have the best record with just different RNG. Had like an offensive Maractus that just straight up broke through Anti's Natu and got to Spike. The game came down kind of close, but Eevee clearly had the win the whole time. So, yeah, good.
Yeah,
pretty good stuff there. And then the last game was General Annoyance versus Byron in DPP. General Annoyance continuing to be very good at DPP and beating Byron's attempt at baton pass. With a this was also the game he brought at Magmar. Yeah, Magmar being good. Yeah, this was funny. Byron Dragonair crit flinched its way through a Metang, and it was like, oh, that's pretty good for Byron. But then his team ended up being completely centered around baton pass, and it was like, oh, can the baton pass win? And it turns out it couldn't win because Sneasel just wasn't strong enough to Oko the Gastrodon. It was probably some kind of roll, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was the game. BP was a bit of a fish, and it didn't work out. Like I respect that. General Annoyance is pretty good, worth a shot. But yeah, didn't really turn up there.
Mm-hmm.
God, it's already been over an hour. All right, final series: the Dens versus Octilleries. I actually thought this series was just pretty boring overall.
We could do this in 2 minutes, bro.
To be completely honest, the one game was a full dead game. That was Teddy versus False, the one thing I wanted to see most by far. I gotta go pull up these replays, but I barely even care. I don't remember most of them. Let's see. We had Banks versus Alice. Banks took a win there.
This was supposed to be me versus Lockjaw, but we'd won the week. Not won the week. We'd guaranteed playoffs by the time I wanted to play. So I hadn't contacted Lockjaw. Lockjaw hadn't contacted me. I just subbed in Alice because they had done a lot of work behind the scenes, just like preparing and helping people out. So I thought, yeah, might as well just have some fun, bring whatever you want in SS and just, play. But yeah, unfortunately they lost that game. It was just an unfortunate matchup.
Yeah, Banks brought the Screens team that we've seen before, and Screens offense just ended up being like a much more playable matchup here against Alice's like pretty fun, but also like a bit of one of those flawed fun teams kind of setups,
Yeah, it's a lot of breaking presence on one team on Alice's part. It's just when you play offense, like you just need to have checks to those 2 or 3 things that have offensive pressure, but in this case Alice didn't, so it was just unfortunate in the matchup.
Pretty much. We had Osh beating Avarice, who also tried to use terrain stuff. I still do not rate terrain. I do not think it's very good. It did not work at all.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're playing a 5.1 versus 6, so you better have a good 5.1, I guess.
It was versus Spikes and a spin blocker with a Sandslash as the only spinner. We've kind of seen how that goes.
That's a brutal matchup.
Honestly, that's kind of why this is why Galarian Rapidash and Thievul had poor win rates. It was like multiple terrain teams and none of them worked, and they were all using these terrain mons. So like all these mons were suspecting or accounts voting on have these bad win rates, but like this is why, because people are trying out terrain and it just was not working. Anyway, Averardo versus ZS. ZS won. Good for them. I don't know. This game was kind of boring. Like ZS did a thing. Had some cool stuff. Had a sub Appleton. That's fun. Had a Wigglytuff. That's always fun. But did they really get? I don't even remember that.
I think they got lucky.
I'm
From what I remember,
skipping through
this game.
I'm skipping through this. I don't.
Oh, Poltergeist missed. Poltergeist missed on the Appleton. That was it.
Oh, there's a Poltergeist dodge. Yeah, I remember seeing that and being like, oh, it's no item Appleton. Like, not even thinking. Yeah, there was a Poltergeist dodge that sucked. So rip. Okay. We had Kushlos versus Soulgazer. This is the one game. Like, we've had some highlight games earlier, and this is just another one of those. Like, this was pretty fun to watch. Kush had a Skuntank and a Sensu versus Soulgazer's double fat blob, Mishana plus Duocean team, which should have gone over pretty well. But Soulgazer did a lot to play this pretty well. Kushlos also really fucked up with his Silvally Dragon, which could have done a massive amount of breaking work after the Mudsdale was weakened, but instead sacked it to weaken the Mudsdale with it, but then sacked it instead of saving it for what was apparently Z Memento Skuntank, when it probably would have just won the end game. And then some shenanigans happened. Soulgazer played pretty good, and Kushlos had the wrong pom-pom set and lost. And probably also could have won if they hit they hit every hurricane and roosted up. Maybe it was a weird end game. It was really hard to tell. I don't think Soulgazer should have won that probably, but they did end up winning it.
Yep, that's what ended up happening.
We'll give you an honorary instead of being 11-1 in SM. We'll give you an honorary 10-2. Only still the best record by 3 games.
I just think,
I don't know. There was Finch versus Royesk, which was significantly less interesting. Royesk brought a Masquerain team. Masquerain almost did work, but it turns out +2 Masquerain does not Oko Rotom Frost, and that was pretty much the game. Like, that really needed to kill. And from there, Finch was fine.
Yeah, after that it was just Vizdef Clef 1 because the Silvally Poison was a weird set, but even then it was like, what was it gonna do?
Well, Royas could have won if their Lurantis was faster than Finch's AV Drampa, but it wasn't, so Drampa still beat it, and that was pretty much it. No Orask because that dead gamed. Black-White, King Wynot brought an incredibly bad team. It's supposed to be like 4 dragons, and then Spike Scaly lead and a Clang as filler. But it literally cannot beat a throw. It literally just dies to throw. Should not have won this game versus TKO in any universe, but managed to crit TKO's bulk up Scraggy. TKO, I guess, getting inspiration from our team with the Scraggy. And just
that was me.
Oh, you built the team.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because TKO built last week, so I didn't know. Was it because we used Scraggy, or did you just like Scraggy?
I think I asked somebody on your team, what did you use for Behem? And I said, and somebody said Scraggy.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'll just use Scraggy.
Yeah, Scraggy's cool. Oh, yeah, yeah. And I was like, last week, Scraggy. Yeah, TKO got lucked, and I feel bad because TKO is pretty cool, and King Wynot just should never have won this game. Like, what the fuck was that dragon spam? It was so bad. But it didn't really matter too much. And like Octilleries were already out. You already had playoffs, so that's a plus. And lastly, there's DPP and Bughouse versus Metalgross. I think this was just kind of a run-of-the-mill, like, okay, pretty interesting DPP game. Not much to say about it. Bughouse had a fun sub-Endeavor Grovile. Metalgross played pretty well overall. Got a really crucial protect as Bughouse tried to explode. And ended up cleaning like a somewhat close game. At the end, Bughouse was like, I got two very low rolls and crit, and that mattered. And it probably did. It was probably a lucky win by Melgross, but I don't care. Kind of whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
There are
all
games
the
that are
games
hacks that I'm like, well,
super
that
boring.
mattered a lot. Like Meowsticks Clangs, that's big ramifications for playoffs, and it's people I'm more invested in. This is like two experienced tour players playing in a game that didn't matter because the playoff chances of both teams are already certified. So whatever, like less invested there. So that's only been an hour and 10 minutes. Briefly, we can hit next week. So this is pretty fun. Um, Karkles, Claydolls, the Dens, all already guaranteed playoffs, and seeding is also pretty likely. Um, like what teams are going to play what. But there's that fourth playoff spot that's not settled. So Meowsticks, because we only tied, it's actually kind of close. Meowsticks are a bit ahead of the Drampas and the Drakloaks, the Bearticks, and the Clangs, but all of these teams have chances. Meowsticks have the best chances, and then Drakloaks, Bearticks, Clangs. We need to win, or we need to tie, and then the Drakloaks don't win. That's the main chances. But if both Meowsticks and Drakloaks get wrecked, then Bearticks and Clangs possibly have a shot. It's also fun that none of these teams happen to be playing each other, which is extremely coincidental. Clangs are playing Dens, Bearticks are playing Octilleries, Claydolls are playing Meowsticks, and Karkles are playing Drakloaks. So none of the teams in contention are playing each other. They're all playing to outplay each other. I think that's a much more interesting dynamic, to be honest. Um,
Yeah,
like obviously sometimes you have, oh, we need to win this week versus the other team that's in contention, and that happens. That's interesting, but I do think it's really cool. This kind of asymmetrical, we just need to outperform. It's also very interesting that
yeah,
Meowsticks and Drakloaks um, are both playing the Claydolls and the Karkles, the two teams that have been big top. Dedens have now come up to be like a top team, but they didn't start that way. The Claydolls and the Drakloaks have been the teams that have been really dominant all tour. And this is the first time, like the Meowsticks and the Drakloaks are both getting like relatively hard matchups. Bearticks have a fairly low shot at playoffs and they need to win a lot, but they are facing the Octilleries, who have been like the last place team by a solid margin, and Clangs have almost no chance. But maybe if every other team loses and you guys aren't taking it very seriously because you already have playoffs, so you just mostly subbed in like players who just wanted to get a game in, maybe they can make it.
yeah. I think that's the key thing is that the four teams that are in contention for playoffs, and then the other four teams that they're playing against, all of them don't have a reason to play. For the most part, like every team is either confirmed playoffs or is dead last. So it's going to be a question of, okay, can you outplay the teams that don't really care?
Mm. Yeah, but there's a lot I'm really looking forward to. Like the Drakloaks need this win, and on the one hand, their SM core, their SS core has actually been pretty poor. They're 6-12 in SS and still in playoffs contention, which says a lot about their old gens. So I think it's really interesting to see how they're going to match up against the Karkles, who have like still not the strongest team on paper if you look at who they're playing, but have really pulled out like more interesting teams, more creative stuff. Um, so we'll see like how that matches up. Their old gens matchups are also pretty interesting. Eva Guerra and DNB tied for the best black white record, fighting it out this week. For us, Meowsticks versus the Claydolls, also very interesting in that like our old gens have been a little bit weaker compared to our SS, but the Claydolls have had much stronger SS and also pretty good old gens. So like we're really gonna need to put up a fight here. Um, but I think there's a lot of fun matchups. Yandod versus Rob Jr., Squash versus Raichi is like two very fun SM games in my opinion. Katut versus Bugsnader, also two people with like two of the top SS records. They're actually the three top SS records are 5-1, TJ, Katut, and Bugsnader, and we get to see Katut and Bugsnader fighting it out, while TJ is fighting Asa from our team, who hasn't played very much. They're 1-1 in SS. That's fun. A couple interesting things in the other matchups, but like I think for the most part, what we're going to see is either Meowsticks or Drakloaks going through, depending who's able to better take on the top team. Is really what I'm looking forward to, and I hope it's us, obviously. But it's been a fun, exciting PPL, except for all the SM building I had to do. So
You should you're good at SM building, bro. Like I think
I have been
using SM
now,
too much. Yeah.
but it's been a long. I put so much work into it, dude. If I was able to get a job or an internship during this pandemic, like I wouldn't have been able to do it because I put in so much time and effort and all that. Because I had no good SM teams to reuse. Like you and Soulgazer have the best record in SM by a mile, pretty much because you already had a bunch of good shit to reuse. I went back in my team builder and I went, literally none of this is fit to be brought whatsoever. All this stuff, like we've reused a couple teams, and it's all been from like Chloe and Asa and whatever. But for the most part, it's been me trying to do like working my ass off for this original shit. So yeah, it's been wild.
Yeah, dude. I think it's also like you could I think maybe sometimes overworking can sometimes hurt people as well because then you start paying too much attention to details and you go into the nitty gritty of your team rather than like no, this will work, don't worry about it.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I would be overworked, like
That
I
can also
said,
affect.
if I was able to get any kind of job in a pandemic. But even Starbucks hasn't replied to me for weeks. So
Oh
instead, I've been
no.
able to split this between. I've been playing so many other video games. I've been like, it's kind of basically just been like a vacation, except trying to apply for jobs, crying repeatedly. So, um, yeah,
Fair enough.
that's balanced it out. I've been playing like lots of sad SM building, but then I also get to go like play Chrono Trigger and relax. So,
Have you considered applying for like I guess it would be grad school?
I've been thinking about it, but like I'm gonna start my college term is gonna start up next month. Um,
Oh god. Alright, so you're just looking for a summer gig.
yeah, it's been trying to get a summer gig, and like literally Starbucks wouldn't reply, and I have 4 years experience working at a coffee shop. So that's where it's that's where it's been, man. Anyway,
That's
anything
okay.
else you want to say about PPL, about whatever, or are we just gonna run into gimmick corner?
I
Um,
think we said so much
Oh,
already.
I actually had one last thing. I've remembered since we talked about terrain. I wanted to go check Grookey's win rate. Uh, it's 0-2. That's how Grookey went. Okay.
Nice.
SS was really
Nice.
interesting. Uh, we really have seen like so many different diverse like 33 different mons got used in SM in SS, which is really fun, and I like seeing all the variety. In past weeks, like last week, we had 26 mons because that was a super fucking centralized meta. Um, it's interesting to see the dips. Like before that, we had a much less centralized meta without the tier shifts. We saw 34 mons, we saw 30 mons. So I'm liking that. Like I did notice that the last week with the Berserker Ninja-esque Eggy meta, so much more centralized. Like 10 less mons got used than some of the other weeks. Um, that was one stat I forgot I really wanted to mention. So, all right,
Fair enough.
let's do gimmick corner. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
Go first, bro. Go ahead.
Okay. So the team I brought was pretty standard, aside from a T-Wave Stunfisk, which I think is good but not interesting enough to talk about. What I do want to talk about is Scarf Roselia. Um, Scarf Roselia, it just has enough speed. It's got 65 speed, which is enough to outspeed Boltund, which is, the fast thing you want to beat. So it beats all the Mons before you get to like Scarfers and setup sweepers. It's like your classic offensive Scarfer, not as a revenge killer, but as an offensive Mon. It hits very hard. Leaf Storm from 100 base special attack, pretty dope. And then it's got all the support moves you'd want. Scarf Spikes, you got it. Scarf T Spikes, if they're weak to T Spikes, free, easy, great. You can force out stuff pretty reasonably with Roselia. Scarf Sleep Powder as like this little filler. Sleep Powder's great. You can slap aromatherapy on it if you've got mons that want to like U-turn on Stunfisk, because you can just hard rose into that Stunfisk. You can even run like Stun Spore if you want. Um, I think Scarf Rose is pretty cool. It's nothing like insane broken. It's not like gonna change the Rose meta, but I really do think this is like a fun, completely reasonable set that people should try out. Uh, yeah, I rate this mon quite heavily.
That's cool. I like Rose.
One of the other only other thing I used was knockoff on Specs Thievel, because it just makes chip,
Hmm.
like it's just a different way to chip type null. You can always parting shot. You could, like I use it over parting shot, Parting shot's fine. Like you can parting shot on switch-ins and then set up spikes on like all of them, and that works. Um, but most of the time, Thievul like wants to be clicking attacks, and knockoff I found made like certain type null games just went a little bit faster. Like you break it through pretty
Yeah.
quick, and no one's expecting knockoff Thievul at this point. So yeah, I think both of
Yeah,
those.
plus you get all the
cool.
LC ones as well. You get like the Xylus and the Lullaby. They hate that.
Well, I never even ran into any of those to use it. I only used it against type null and
Yeah,
to knock
that's
off
the
Licky
common
Licky
thing.
when playing full stall because that also chips it a lot.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. I like the idea of it, to be honest. I like the idea of just having a specs one and then just a random physical attack. That just makes my life happy.
Yeah, I think it's cool. All right, and an hour and 20 minutes. We've waited. We've made the people wait a very long time. What's Sajad got for us?
Well, I was talking to a lot of the British smoke on players because yeah, the World Cup team was something that I ran, and they've been playing a lot of PU recently, and the set that they were coming up with that they were saying was really really good, and that I tried out afterwards was AV Dusknot, and I come to agree with them. I think it's basically unkillable, and the nice thing about it is that you don't have to switch it out of the evil because it might be a ghost, but you can easily tank a dark pulse from most ranges, to be honest. And yeah, I think overall it's an underrated like special meta check with good offensive prowess. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's good to showcase like a pretty standard thing that's just underrated instead of always having something pretty whack.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side, we did see my Thievul just 2KOs Sergio's AV Dust Noir as it just like earthquaked back and died, so that can happen to it too. But it is nice to not immediately die to Thievul in general with pretty much everything. That'll pretty much cover it. An hour and 20 minutes. That's what happens when we try to give even time to all the teams and all the matches instead of like rushing through the end.
Yeah.
And even then, we kind of rushed through Octillery's to Dens, but it was only a 7-game week, and the games were boring, so whatever.
Mm-hmm. I'll even take the backseat there. I'll just say it's fucking boring. Don't really care.
Wait, 2X said you referenced Flare Boost, Driftlim, and Council Minutes? I didn't even see that. Who the fuck uses Flare Boost?
I saw a couple of Flare Boosts, actually. They were quite good.
It seems like it wouldn't be that bad on paper. Like, you can strength sap all the burn damage away. It's got double special attack.
Can't toxic it.
Yeah, the problem is just still losing to, all the normals, like, just as bad, so whatever. But actually, I kind of want to try that. It seems fun. All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoy it. Like, these are always so weird because it's an hour 22 minutes, and I really think some of the best stuff we talked about is at the end. But I don't think most people listen till now, which is fair because like it's a fucking PU podcast. Anyway, that's just my ramblings. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next week with the results of week 7, going into playoffs, more PU Open stuff, all that good stuff. So, yeah, adios, amigos.